By the way, that's a DeVille Coolio presidential ticket.
Yeah.
They're close to signing John Barron as their communications director.
Is that serious?
No.
No, I thought. No, I never know. Somebody else.
It's a fictional person.
It's really Trump. One of our loyal listeners, Ronald from Berwyn, said, by your formula, my stripper name would be California Cocker.
Oh, that's, boy, I tell you what, that's good enough. You should consider coming out of retirement.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Switching gears to the more serious now. We have a serious journalist, not a crank like the two of us. She's Salena Zito. Of course, she has risen to more prominence through the 2016 election cycle and since, because she kind of zigged when the rest of the D.C. press corps was zagging and actually talked to voters.
Whoa.
Sort of novel insight into journalism, talk to voters, not just to other journalists. And so she had a handle on the Trump revolt that was brewing, and of course crescendoed at just the right time in November of 2016. Now she's got a book about that, The Great Revolt, Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. We're pleased to be joined again by Salena Zito. Salena, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I always love being on with you guys.
Thank you. We love having you on, and excited about your book. We had Peter Berkowitz on, actually, because he penned a review of your book and did a nice distillation of it, sort of the Trump electoral coalition. And I like some of the creative group names you gave to the various coalition partners. I think my favorite, the King Cyrus Christians. So why don't we start there? Who are the King Cyrus Christians, and will they stick with Trump through 2018 and 2020?
Well, thank you. And actually, I have to credit my co-author. He came up with all of the names. He's the clever wordsmith. I'm just the storyteller. The King Cyrus Christians, I think sometimes the people that the national media and pundits most misunderstood their reasons for voting for Trump, and often put them under fire whenever he does something that's considered, beyond the pale in terms of decorum. The King Cyrus Christians are evangelical and Catholic voters who, for years and years and years, I can remember Chamber of Commerce types and moderate Republican establishment types complaining about their lack of willingness to vote outside of someone that was just like them, someone who was more religious, someone that shared their values, and wished that they would be more pragmatic with their vote. Well, lo and behold, in this election, they decided to do just that. As Tony Perkins said, it was not about shared values, it was about shared priorities. And evangelical and Catholic voters believed that religious liberty was greatly at stake, and that the Supreme Court was in jeopardy of having a liberal bent to it for a generation, possibly two, and they wanted to have a hand in shaping that from not happening. And they saw in Trump someone who would stand. They didn't share their values. I mean, you remember, this sort of awkward conversation about like the communion wafer and the wine and Corinthians, right. And it was clear that he did not did not share their religiosity. But when he came out with that list that he worked with the Federalist Society to put together on what jurist he would pick, that pretty much sealed the deal for most of them.
So do you think the same people that supported Trump last time, they're going to stick with him no matter what? I mean, he famously said on the campaign trail that if I shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, I'll still get all the votes.
I feel very little movement away from him, if any. And 3.8 unemployment numbers, 3.8% unemployment numbers, tying with the best since 1969, an entire generation. That's just only reinforces that support.
Yesterday, John Boehner, former House Speaker, said the Republican Party's sort of taking a nap right now, that there is no Republican Party. There's just the Trump Party. Do you think that's true? And if it's true, is that good news or bad news for congressional Republicans? Because some would argue that Trump is going to be for Republicans what Obama was for Democrats. He personally survives and perhaps wins a reelection based on his charisma and personality. But down ballot, there's really a price to pay.
So John Boehner wasn't wrong, but I would never call them the Trump Party. I would because it's not. He's the result of it. He's not the cause of it. And the Republican establishment has to wrestle with this new populist coalition that is a conservative populist coalition that has attached to the Republican Party. So he's not wrong in that assessment. And no, I don't think it's the same thing with that Obama did to the Democratic Party, in that the President Obama didn't form a new coalition. This was the Democratic Party who voted for him, but he took the Democratic Party in a much more progressive path, and that didn't sit well with moderate and conservative Democrats that live, in those state legislative and congressional seats where he lost seats. So it's two different things. Now that doesn't mean that President Trump won't lose seats down ballot in 2018. Historically, with the exception, I believe, was 1974 and 2002, presidents in power, their party in power, always loses seats. But I'm not convinced that a blue wave is inevitable because of the decision that Democratic primary voters have been making in states like my own in Pennsylvania, but also Georgia and Kentucky, where they go for the most liberal, most progressive candidate, as opposed to someone who suits their district better, that is more moderate and and more in line with how the voters vote.
Now, it may turn out differently, but isn't there a commonality in terms of cult of personality between Trump and Obama, where people personally liked Obama and they didn't like his policies, and Trump, to some extent, is the inverse of that. A lot of people maybe don't like sort of him personally and so how he conducts himself, but they like his policies and they like the production those policies have provided. And so,
right.
So they survive because they're the personality around which the quote unquote cults have survived. But for congressional candidates, House members, Senate members, governors, and the like, who don't have these sort of compelling personalities, at least to big constituencies, they wear the jacket for the things that those same people don't like about the president they otherwise do like. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I don't know the answer to that. That's the great mystery, right? Maybe ask me in October when people start to pay attention.
Yeah.
Right now, the most active people, most engaged people, the most angry people are people to the left, or people that were Republicans who don't like Trump, and they're the ones that are turning out for Democrats. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the people that voted for Trump aren't going to show up as well. And that's sort of where the mystery lies. And they, honestly, conservatives and independents tend to not make up their mind and to show up, in particular in midterms, until about the second week of October. So we got a lot of speculating to do for a while. But I think what's really important about the Great Revolt is it not only shows you what happened, but more importantly, it shows you what happens next. And what frontiers this coalition are going to impact. If you look yesterday at the news about Dick's Sporting Goods and how much impact it's taken, or negative impact and bottom line impact that has hit him since they decided to become politically engaged and choose a side, I think that this coalition is going to, impact a lot of things, including the NFL. And we're still, it's amazing to me that we're in the middle of this movement and we're still not listening to what it has to say.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because one of the other sort of coalition partners of the revolt, one of the other groups of revolutionaries I thought was interesting that was distilled in your book, in addition to the King Cyrus Christians, the other group that the D.C. press corps may have the most time wrapping their minds around and thus not understanding why Trump did so well among this cohort is what you refer to in the book as girl gun power. Voters who are strong, smart, independent women who like their guns because they provide the ability to defend themselves. And maybe this explains why, women, some women of the left can't figure out how 30 million women voted for Trump.
Exactly right. And these women are often highly educated, in stable marriages, live in the suburbs, upper middle class, and they believe the most feminist thing that they can do is to empower themselves by protecting themselves with a gun, and protecting themselves, their families, where they work. That is bewildering to a lot of people. Women are the fastest growing purchasers of guns, and it's a statistic that largely goes unnoticed by the national media.
She is Salena Zito. She's a reporter for the Washington Examiner, New York Post columnist, CNN contributor. The book that you want to pick up, The Great Revolt, Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics, as Salena was saying, both explaining what happened in 2016 and who made it happen, and then what's going to happen as this coalition asserts itself. Salena, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Good luck with the book.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.